I'm Brandon Kesler, and this is the story of how my sister Danielle fired me from our family's hotel chain, where I dedicated 15 years of my life only to discover she had severely underestimated me. This isn't just a tale of family betrayal or business schemes. It's about patience, preparation, and the power of working quietly but effectively. Join me on a dramatic journey where I turn the pain of betrayal into an unexpected triumph. You'll want to stick around until the end, as I'll reveal a crucial lesson about protecting yourself from those who try to push you out of the game, whether they're family or rivals. It all began at Skyreach Hotels, a boutique hotel chain run by my family with 8 properties scattered across the Northeast United States. From quaint inns in Burlington, Vermont, to luxurious seaside destinations in Portland, Maine, Skyreach was my grandfather's dream built into a proud brand by my father. I wasn't the one in the spotlight. Danielle, my sister, was the one who loved attending conferences, shaking hands with investors, and dreaming of turning Skyreach into a national name. Me, I preferred working behind the scenes, ensuring our staff was taken care of. Guests were happy, and everything from HVAC systems to bed linens was perfect. My father used to say, Danielle sees the big picture, but you see the details that make it work. I always thought it was a perfect balance until it fell apart. 11 days after Danielle was appointed company president, she called me into her office. I still remember her cold stare, her flawless red suit, and the way she crossed her arms as if she'd rehearsed the moment. Brandon, she said, you're not equipped to run a business. The board agrees we need fresh perspectives. The board? That was just her, my father, and 2 business school friends she'd recently appointed. She announced she'd hired a consultant from Marriott to replace me, and I'd receive 6 months severance. That was it. 15 years of dedication, from negotiating with vendors to managing renovation projects, erased in a 15-minute meeting. I stayed calm, packed my family photos into a box, and when she asked if I had anything to say, I just smiled and said, "Good luck with the Westbrook renovation." I saw a flicker of panic in her eyes. She knew that project was a mess, and now it was hers. As I left the Boston office, I wasn't panicking. Why? Because 5 years earlier, my father gave me advice that changed everything. Never put all your eggs in one basket, Brandon. Hotels are our lifeblood, but land is where the real value lies. That seed took root in my mind, and I quietly acted on it, preparing for a day I didn't expect to come so soon. Driving home, I knew my patience would soon pay off. Just 3 months from now, Skyreach's land leases were up for renewal, and that's when everything would change. Let's rewind a bit. I grew up in the hallways of Skyreach, not in boardrooms, but in back rooms where maintenance staff taught me how to fix heaters or negotiate better deals with suppliers. By 16, I could troubleshoot a broken HVAC system as well as any adult on the team. Danielle was different. She loved tagging along with Dad to events, learning how to charm crowds and build a public image. My father never complained, but he always reminded me that details were the foundation of success. "You're the one who keeps things running," he'd say. And I took pride in that. But as Dad aged, Danielle started to change. She brought in consultants with flashy reports talking about restructuring and national expansion. She dreamed of high-profile partners and lifestyle brands, sometimes making me wonder if she remembered our job was to provide guests with a comfortable night's sleep. 5 years ago, when Dad first mentioned retirement, I saw the risk. During a financial review, I discovered that our three most profitable hotels, Burlington, Portland, and Westbrook, were built on leased land, not owned. Those 99-year leases were signed long ago, but now the landowners wanted to sell. If someone bought that land and raised the rent, Skyreach would be in serious trouble. I brought the issue to Dad over lunch at his favorite Vermont steakhouse. "This is a vulnerability," I said. "I can buy the land with personal funds and lease it back to Skyreach at the old rate." He looked at me over his glasses, skeptical. "That's a big investment, Brandon," I replied. "I've saved and I believe in our company." The next day, he connected me with the bank. 3 months later, I owned the land under Skyreach's 3 flagship hotels. The company remained the tenant with favorable leases for 5 years. When Dad asked if Danielle knew, I said it's all in the company records. He laughed. "Your sister doesn't read those unless forced." And he was right, she never did. Now, after being fired, I sat on my Boston porch watching the harbor at dawn. My phone was silent, no longer buzzing with urgent reports or problems to solve. I sipped coffee, thinking about Danielle and the changes she was making. A text from Miguel, the head of maintenance at Westbrook, jolted me. Heard what happened. Their loss. New consultants cutting costs, messing up the renovation. I replied simply, "Thanks. It wasn't my problem anymore." But another message from Dad caught my attention. "Breakfast at Rosie's, 8 a.m. Rosie's was a diner near our first office where we rarely met. I knew this wasn't just a casual meal. At the diner, Dad looked older than I remembered. He sat in a booth, stirring coffee, and got straight to the point. "Danielle told me after she fired you." I didn't agree, but I didn't stop her. I looked at him, not asking questions, just observing. He sighed. "She thinks Skyreach needs to be more professional, less family-run." I nodded, cutting into my eggs. "What about the land?" he asked. "Danielle doesn't fully understand the leases," I replied. "It's all in the records." He gave me a sharp look. "The leases are up for renewal soon. What's your plan?" "Brandon," I answered calmly. "Market rate leases, nothing more. Nothing less." He stopped eating, realizing that would significantly increase Skyreach's operating costs. We finished breakfast in silence, and as we left, he put a hand on my shoulder. "Your sister sees business as a game to win. You build foundations. Don't forget the difference." His words echoed in me, but I also realized a painful truth: he'd let Danielle tear our family apart. 2 weeks later, Danielle called, but I let it go to voicemail. Her tone was icy. "Brandon, we need to discuss the handover. Some documents are missing. Call me back." No apology, no acknowledgement that she'd fired her own brother. I deleted the message and met an old friend, now a real estate developer. The next day, Danielle showed up at my apartment uninvited. "You're ignoring me," she said, sitting on my couch as if she owned the place. "I respect your decision to remove me from the company," I replied, standing at the kitchen counter, not offering her coffee. She frowned. "We're missing vendor contracts, maintenance schedules, Westbrook renovation plans, and the land lease documents." I told her everything was on the shared drive, but she complained my system was not intuitive. I echoed her own words back. "My replacement is a consultant who turned around hotels twice our size. I'm sure he'll figure it out." She narrowed her eyes, angry, but I opened the door, ending the conversation. A week later, I received a letter from Skyreach's lawyers demanding all company-related documents. I forwarded it to my lawyer, who responded that everything was on the company server and my personal notes were my property. Meanwhile, I started getting calls from Skyreach staff. Danielle's new consultant was cutting hours, delaying maintenance, and switching long-time vendors for cheaper options. Staff morale was low and guests were starting to complain. I didn't feel smug, just empty. These were people I'd worked with, some I'd hired myself. Their livelihoods were at risk because of Danielle's ambition and my absence. Then an email from the real estate insurance company arrived asking for clarification about ownership changes at the 3 flagship hotels. It turned out Danielle had tried updating the insurance contracts and discovered the truth: Skyreach didn't own the land under those hotels, I did. I forwarded the email to my lawyer without responding. The next morning, Dad called, his voice tense. "You know Danielle doesn't read legal documents, right?" I said. "Yes," he sighed. "She called an emergency board meeting saying you withheld critical information. I told him every contract was clearly filed and Skyreach had been paying rent to me through BK Holdings. Brandon Kesler Holdings for 5 years." Dad was stunned. She thought that was a property management company. It turned out Danielle had signed financial reports without realizing she was paying her brother. The board meeting was scheduled for the next day, and Dad wanted me there. "This is still a family company," he said. I reminded him I was no longer on the board, but deep down I knew I had to act. I asked my lawyer to send new lease terms to Skyreach, market rates, no discounts. These terms would significantly increase operating costs, putting Danielle in a tough spot. But that wasn't all. One day I drove to the Westbrook Hotel, our largest property, and sat in my car watching guests come and go. My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. They received the new lease terms, awaiting response. I knew the numbers would shock them. The previous favorable leases had saved Skyreach millions. Suddenly, I saw Danielle's familiar silver Mercedes pull into a reserved spot. She wasn't supposed to be in Portland today. I called Miguel, who said, "Your sister's freaking out. Emergency inspection brought the new consultant. They're looking for property records, blueprints, something about a structural assessment." I thanked him and drove to Portland's Public Records Office. There I uncovered something unexpected. Danielle, using her married name, had filed development permits for a large-scale hotel project on coastal land near Portland under the name Kesler Vision LLC, not Skyreach. I dug deeper and found similar permits in Burlington and Westbrook, all for competing hotels. It turned out that while I was loyal to Skyreach, Danielle had been secretly planning to launch her own hotel chain, targeting our same market. She didn't fire me because I was incompetent. She fired me because I was in the way of her true ambitions. I immediately called my lawyer, asking her to investigate Kesler Vision. 2 days later, we had the full picture. Danielle had been courting investors for her own luxury hotel brand for 3 years, using Skyreach's reputation and clientele to build her pitch. She planned to devalue Skyreach's hotels, force the company to sell them and buy them cheaply for her new venture. I'd end up as her landlord, a scenario she hadn't anticipated. The betrayal felt like a punch to the chest. I flew to New York to meet Julian Hayes, CEO of Commonwealth Hotels, someone I'd met at industry events. I proposed a deal. Commonwealth would buy Skyreach's 3 hotels when they went up for sale, and I'd lease them the land at favorable rates. Julian agreed, especially since Commonwealth was known for retaining staff during acquisitions important to me. I didn't want employees like Miguel losing their jobs over family drama. Meanwhile, I got a call from Vincent Ross, Danielle's board friend. I saw the new lease terms, he said, and heard about Kesler vision. I confirmed, and he revealed Danielle planned to propose selling the 3 hotels, citing the new lease rates as making them unprofitable. It all clicked. She wanted Skyreach to sell the hotels so Kesler Vision could buy them cheaply, making her my tenant. I thanked Vincent and prepared my next move. Instead of attending the board meeting, I focused on Commonwealth. Word spread fast in the industry. A blog wrote about Skyreach's financial struggles and Commonwealth's interest. Danielle sent a company-wide email denying asset sales, but the pressure was mounting. Dad called, sounding weary. The board rejected Danielle's sale proposal. She's furious, says you're sabotaging the company. I replied, I'm protecting what I built. He went silent, and I knew he was grappling with the truth about Danielle. 3 weeks later, Skyreach's stock dropped 12% after a quarterly report showed declining revenue and rising costs. The board minus Danielle requested a meeting with me to discuss strategic solutions. I walked into the boardroom for the first time since being fired. Danielle sat at the head, her face tense. Dad looked aged, the board members neutral. I opened my briefcase and waited for them to speak. Danielle started, her voice sharp. My brother is trying to hijack our father's company. I calmly countered, presenting documents about Kesler, vision permits, business plans, intent to exploit Skyreach. The room went silent. Dad paled, looking at Danielle. Is this true? She didn't answer, and her silence spoke volumes. I presented Commonwealth's offer. Buy the hotels above market value, retain all staff, and honor guest commitments. Danielle accused me of plotting for years, but I corrected her. I bought the land to protect the company. You decided I wasn't family. The board unanimously approved Commonwealth's offer. Danielle stormed out, and the next day they asked her to resign. I declined an interim leadership role. I was done with Skyreach's politics. A year later, I stood on the rooftop of Harborview, formerly the Westbrook Hotel, now Commonwealth's flagship. Revenue was up 17%. Miguel still ran maintenance, and most staff stayed. Kesler Vision went bankrupt. Turns out hotel development takes more than ambition and an MBA. Dad retired, and we started monthly dinners with my niece, keeping the family ties that mattered. This story isn't about revenge, but about protecting what you build. Danielle saw business as a game to win. I saw it as a foundation to build. In the end, foundations outlast egos. The lesson: always safeguard your work. Document your contributions, protect your intellectual property, and know your worth, because those who crave the spotlight will always need you more than they think. But the story doesn't end there. Just when I thought I'd uncovered Danielle's full plan, another shock emerged, revealing her betrayal ran deeper than I imagined. One afternoon, while reviewing Kesler Vision LLC documents, my lawyer Patricia called with urgency. Brandon, you need to hear this. I just received a document from an industry source. Danielle wasn't just planning to compete with Skyreach, she was deliberately undermining the company from within even before firing you. My blood boiled. What do you mean? Patricia explained that Danielle had secretly met with a group of New York real estate investors who specialized in buying distressed hotels at bargain prices. She'd fed them insider information about Skyreach's financial issues I had spent years managing and shielding to protect the company. Worse, she'd intentionally delayed payments to major vendors, causing them to refuse deliveries, disrupting hotel operations. all to make Skyreach look like a sinking ship ripe for her investors to swoop in. I could hardly believe it. Danielle didn't just want to build her own empire, she was willing to destroy our family's legacy to do it. But what stunned me most was a detail in the document. One of the investors she worked with was Eric Thornton, an old college friend of mine who'd worked with Skyreach on a renovation project a decade ago. I had introduced Eric to Danielle at an industry event thinking he could help us expand. Instead, he turned on me, becoming Danielle's ally in this scheme. The betrayal now wasn't just familial, it came from someone I'd once considered a friend. I resolved not to let emotions take over. Instead, I asked Patricia to dig deeper into Danielle and Eric's connection. Meanwhile, I reached out to another industry friend, Lisa Carter, a reporter for Hospitality Insider, a prominent hotel industry blog. I didn't want to leak the story immediately, it could hurt Skyreach's staff and guests. But I needed someone watching and ready to go public if Danielle pushed things too far. Lisa agreed to keep it confidential, but warned Brandon if this breaks, it'll be a bombshell in the industry. Your sister's playing a dangerous game. Meanwhile, Danielle seemed to sense I was quietly fighting back. She launched an internal PR campaign at Skyreach, sending emails to staff claiming the company was stronger than ever, and that certain individuals, clearly meaning me, were trying to undermine her success. She even held a company-wide Zoom meeting standing in front of the Skyreach logo, talking about new vision and innovation. A loyal employee sent me the recording. Listening to Danielle's confident voice, I couldn't help but recall the times she'd taken credit for achievements my team and I had sweated for. But this time I noticed something. She was scared. Her voice trembled slightly. Her eyes darted when mentioning the company's temporary challenges. She knew I held something that could unravel her plans. I decided to turn up the pressure. I asked my lawyer to send a formal notice to Skyreach's board requesting an independent audit of Danielle's financial decisions over the past year. This wasn't just about exposing Kesler vision. I wanted them to see how she deliberately harmed Skyreach for personal gain. Simultaneously, I met with Julian Hayes of Commonwealth Hotels again to finalize acquisition details. Julian, sharp and direct, looked at me across his New York office desk and said, "Brandon, I've seen family drama in this industry, but your story takes the cake. Your sister thinks she's the wolf, but you're the one leading the pack." I smiled, but inside I wasn't amused. This wasn't a game to me. It was about protecting those who trusted me, from Miguel in maintenance to the front desk staff I trained from day one. Soon after meeting Julian, I received a text from Eric Thornton. "Brandon, we need to talk. Meet me at the Beacon Street Cafe tonight, 7 p.m. I nearly deleted it, but curiosity won. I wanted to know his angle. Right on time, I walked into the cozy cafe filled with the smell of roasted coffee and soft golden light. Eric sat in a corner looking nervous, not the confident guy I remembered from college. "Brandon," he began, "I didn't know Danielle was going this far. She told me you agreed to leave Skyreach, that you wanted a break. I only got involved thinking it was a business opportunity." I stared, saying nothing, letting the silence push him to continue. He admitted Danielle had promised his investor group access to Skyreach's hotels at a discount, but when I revealed my land ownership, their plan started crumbling. "She's losing control," Eric said. "Investors are pulling out." I don't want to go down with her. I didn't fully trust Eric. He was clearly trying to save himself, but I saw an opportunity. If you want to make this right, I said, get me proof of Danielle's dealings with your group. Eric hesitated but nodded. 2 days later, he sent me emails and documents, including exchanges between Danielle and investors, where she described Skyreach as an asset ripe for acquisition and deliberately devalued the hotels by delaying critical investment. I forwarded everything to Patricia, asking her to prepare a detailed report for the board. But then an unexpected twist hit. One morning I got a frantic call from Miguel. Brandon, trouble at Westbrook. Guests are freaking out in the lobby because the booking system crashed and Danielle's blaming our tech team. I drove to Westbrook immediately, not because I still worked for Skyreach, but because I couldn't stand by while my staff were mistreated. When I arrived, it was chaos, angry guests lined up, front desk staff looked exhausted, and Danielle stood in a corner yelling into her phone. I stepped in, told the staff to take a break, and started managing the crowd using years of experience to calm guests. Within an hour, I'd manually reorganized bookings, contacted the tech team to fix the system, and even offered guests free coffee as an apology. Danielle watched from afar, her expression a mix of anger and confusion. When things settled, she approached and said, "You don't work here anymore." "Why are you interfering?" I replied. "Because these people deserve better. And because I still care about Skyreach, even if you don't want me to." That moment spread through the staff. Employees started whispering, some openly supporting me, sending emails to the board demanding a review of my firing. Danielle felt the pressure and reacted the only way she knew how, by attacking. She hired a PR firm to launch a media campaign portraying herself as a trailblazing female leader fighting conservative forces in the company. She even appeared on an industry podcast spinning a fabricated story that I'd refused to support her initiatives and voluntarily left to pursue other opportunities. Listening to the podcast, I almost laughed at her audacity, but I also knew she was desperate. She was losing control of the narrative. Meanwhile, the audit I'd requested began yielding results. Auditors found that Danielle had diverted Skyreach funds to accounts tied to Kesler Vision under the guise of consulting fees. This wasn't just unethical, it could be illegal. The board called another emergency meeting, this time inviting me. As I walked into the boardroom, Danielle looked like a cornered animal. She tried to deflect, accusing me of manipulating the board, but I presented Eric's documents and the audit report. "Danielle," I said, voice steady, "you used Skyreach's money to fund your own company while harming the hotels our father and grandfather built. This isn't innovation, it's sabotage." Dad, silent through the meeting, finally spoke. "Danielle, you've gone too far." His voice trembled and I saw tears in his eyes. It was the first time I'd seen him confront the truth about his daughter. The board voted on the spot, demanding Danielle's immediate resignation. She stood, threw her papers on the table, and stormed out, not looking back. After the meeting, Vincent Ross, a board member, approached me. "We need an interim leader, Brandon. You're the obvious choice." I shook my head. "I'm done with Skyreach. I want to focus on what matters, people, not politics." But the drama wasn't over. A week later, Danielle filed a lawsuit against me and Skyreach, alleging I'd conspired to seize control of the company and that my land ownership was illegitimate. The lawsuit was clearly a desperate attempt to save face, but it sparked a media storm. Industry publications picked up the story, and Hospitality Insider published a detailed exposé based on Lisa's sources laying bare Danielle's scheme. The article went viral, and Skyreach's stock dropped another 10%. I worked closely with my lawyers to counter the lawsuit, providing every document proving my land purchase was legal and transparent. Ultimately, the court dismissed Danielle's case, but not before she further damaged Skyreach's reputation. Meanwhile, the Commonwealth Hotels deal moved forward swiftly. They finalized the purchase of the 3 hotels, Burlington, Portland, and Westbrook, and I signed land leases with them, ensuring favorable rates to keep costs low. What made me proudest was that Commonwealth retained all staff from Miguel to the housekeepers I'd worked with for years. When I visited Harborview, formerly the Westbrook Hotel, I saw Miguel training a new maintenance crew. He grinned and said, "You saved us, Brandon. No one else cared like you." I shook my head. "You guys keep this place running. I just did my part." But another surprise was waiting. One day I received a letter from a lawyer representing an anonymous investor who wanted to buy my land ownership at double market value. I refused immediately. The land wasn't just an asset, it was my family's legacy. However, Patricia discovered the investor was linked to a parent company that had worked with Danielle. Even after her bankruptcy, Danielle was still trying to regain control through third parties. I had Patricia send a legal warning and the offers stopped. A year later, I stood on Harborview's rooftop overlooking Casco Bay, shimmering at sunset. Commonwealth had turned the place into a northeast gem, and I, as a consulting director, did the work I loved, negotiating with vendors, training staff, ensuring quality. No fancy office, no expensive suits, just real work. Dad fully retired, and we had monthly dinners, often with my niece, Danielle's daughter. I never let her drama affect my love for her kids. Danielle, after Kesler Vision's collapse, moved to California, trying to start anew. But I heard she was struggling. I didn't take joy in that, just felt sorry for her for choosing ambition over family. Just when I thought the drama with Danielle had peaked, another secret from the past surfaced, forcing me to face a challenge bigger than I'd ever imagined. One evening, while working at my home office reviewing Commonwealth Hotels reports, I received an untitled email from an anonymous address. It read simply, "Ask your father about Skyreach's secret fund. It involves Danielle." I stared at the screen, heart pounding. A secret fund? I'd managed Skyreach's operations for 15 years and never heard of any unrecorded funds. But curiosity and a bad feeling wouldn't let me ignore it. I called Patricia, immediately asking her to investigate any signs of unusual accounts tied to Skyreach. "Brandon, are you sure you want to dig into this?" she asked. "If it involves your father, it could get messy." I replied, "I need the truth, whatever it is." While waiting for Patricia, I decided to confront Dad directly. I drove to the family's old house in suburban Boston, where he lived alone since Mom passed a decade ago. As I walked in, he was in the living room reading a book on hotel industry history. He smiled, but his eyes held a hint of worry when he saw me. "You're here late, so this isn't just for coffee," he said, setting the book down. I got to the point. "Dad, is there a secret Skyreach fund I don't know about? One tied to Danielle?" His face paled, and for a moment I saw panic, something I'd never seen in him before. He sighed, stood, and retrieved a stack of old yellow documents from a safe in his study. "You deserve to know," he said, voice low. But you have to promise this won't destroy our family any further. The documents revealed the shocking truth 20 years ago. As Skyreach expanded, Dad created a secret fund called the Legacy Fund to protect the company from potential financial crises. It held millions amassed from hotel profits and kept in an offshore account off the official books. Only Dad and a longtime financial advisor knew about it until Danielle found out 3 years ago. According to the documents, she convinced Dad the fund should be used for her strategic initiatives, and he, trusting her vision, allowed her to withdraw portions. But instead of investing in Skyreach, Danielle funneled the money into Kesler Vision LLC, using it to court investors and buy land for her competing hotel projects. Worse, she'd forged Dad's signature on some transactions to cover her tracks. I felt the ground drop beneath me. Not only had Danielle betrayed me, but she'd deceived our father, who'd spent his life building Skyreach. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, voice trembling with anger and hurt. He looked at the floor. "I thought she just needed time to grow up. I didn't want you and your sister to turn against each other." I shook my head, incredulous. His favoritism toward Danielle had allowed her to sabotage our family's legacy unchecked. I left his house that night with the documents, determined to expose the full truth, even if it meant confronting him too. The next day I met with Patricia and Commonwealth Hotels' legal team to discuss the legacy fund. Patricia confirmed Danielle's transactions were not only unethical but potentially criminal fraud. "If we go public with this, Danielle could face serious legal consequences," she said. "But it'll also damage Skyreach's reputation and might implicate your father." I wrestled with the decision. Part of me wanted Danielle to pay for everything she'd done, but I knew destroying Skyreach entirely would hurt the employees I'd vowed to protect. Ultimately, I decided to use the information as leverage to ensure Danielle never harmed the company again. I had Patricia send a formal letter to Danielle stating we'd uncovered the legacy fund transactions and were prepared to turn them over to authorities unless she completely withdrew from the hotel industry and relinquished all claims to Skyreach. The letter also demanded she return the funds she'd withdrawn, estimated at $2.5 million, to an account controlled by the board for restoring Skyreach's remaining hotels. I knew it was a bold move, but I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions. In response, Danielle didn't call or show up in person. Instead, she sent a lengthy email written by her lawyer denying all allegations and threatening to sue me for defamation and unlawful coercion. But I noticed something odd. The email was sent from an address in Los Angeles, not California, as I thought she was in. I had Patricia investigate, and we learned Danielle had quietly moved to a luxury Hollywood apartment using Kesler Vision funds to sustain a lavish lifestyle while her company went bankrupt. She was trying to rebrand herself as a brand consultant for West Coast hotel projects, hoping to rebuild her reputation after her East Coast failure. This twist made me both angry and amused. Danielle, ever craving the spotlight, couldn't let go of it even after losing everything, but I didn't have time to dwell on emotions. A new issue arose. A small group of Skyreach shareholders, former Danielle supporters, began pressuring the board, demanding an investigation into the Commonwealth sale. They alleged I'd manipulated land prices to force Skyreach to sell cheaply, and that Commonwealth had paid me a secret commission to secure the deal. These claims were baseless, but they sparked a social media firestorm, with some Twitter posts calling me a family traitor and corporate puppet. I knew Danielle's fingerprints were on these accusations. Even after leaving Skyreach, she was trying to stir chaos from afar, possibly to distract from her own legal troubles. I decided to face the shareholders head-on. In an online meeting, I presented all documents on my land ownership lease terms and the Commonwealth contract proving everything was transparent and legal. I also revealed part of the legacy fund story without details to shield Dad enough to show Danielle had misused company assets. The shareholders went quiet, some even apologizing for doubting me. The meeting ended with the board committing to hire a new non-family CEO to guide Skyreach through the crisis. But the drama still wasn't over. One morning I got a call from Lisa Carter at Hospitality Insider. Brandon, I just received a document from an anonymous source. It's Danielle's personal diary written over the past 2 years. Want to see it? I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to invade my sister's privacy, but another knew the diary could unlock her true motives. I agreed, and Lisa sent me digitized pages. Reading them, I felt both heartbroken and astonished. Danielle wrote about a deep rivalry with me, not because I was better, but because she felt Dad always saw me as the reliable child, while she had to prove herself constantly. She admitted planning to oust me from Skyreach, since Dad mentioned retirement and that Kesler vision wasn't just a business dream. It was her way to escape our family's shadow. But the most shocking part was a recent entry written after her move to Los Angeles. Danielle revealed she was working with a Hollywood producer to turn her story into a TV drama portraying herself as a female entrepreneur betrayed by her family. She'd exaggerated everything, depicting me as a greedy schemer out to seize Skyreach and Dad as a domineering, favoritist father. Reading those words, I no longer felt anger, just pity. Danielle had trapped herself in a fictional narrative where she was the victim and she was willing to sell out her family for fame. I chose not to publicize the diary, but sent a copy to Dad with a short note. Dad, this is what Danielle really thinks. I won't let her destroy what we've built, but I think you need to know. Dad called days later, his voice choked. Brandon, I was wrong to let things go this far. I want to make it right. He offered to use personal funds to replenish the legacy fund, and I agreed on the condition the money improved working conditions for Skyreach's staff. That's how I wanted to honor our true family legacy, not through hotels, but through the people who made them. Meanwhile, I learned Danielle's TV show was cancelled because the producer couldn't verify her story. She faded from the public eye, and the last I heard, she was working as a freelance marketer in Los Angeles, far from the hotel industry. Skyreach, under its new CEO, began to recover, though it was no longer the powerhouse it once was. Commonwealth Hotels thrived, and I found joy in consulting, focusing on building teams and delivering real value. But one final surprise came one afternoon when I received a handwritten letter from Danielle. No apology, no explanation, just one line. You won, Brandon. I hope you're happy. I stared at the letter, unsure how to feel. I didn't feel like a winner, just relieved it was finally over. I folded the letter, tucked it in a drawer, and stepped onto Harborview's rooftop, looking out at the sea. There under the sunset, I knew that no matter how big the drama, the foundation I'd built, not just with land, but with loyalty and hard work, would always stand strong. This story isn't just about overcoming betrayal, it's about finding strength within yourself, even when those closest to you turn away. If you're watching, remember, protect your work, stand up for what's right, and never let anyone make you doubt your worth. Skyreach is my past, but the lessons I learned will forever shape my future. After all the turmoil, schemes, and tense confrontations with Danielle, I finally found peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because I'd learned to stand firm in the storm. A meeting with Victor Langston turned out to be a turning point. We didn't just discuss investments, we partnered to develop a new project. A Commonwealth branded boutique hotel chain focused on sustainability and local experiences from Boston to smaller cities like Portsmouth and Bar Harbor. I took on the role of creative director, not in boardrooms, but working directly with architects, staff, and communities to ensure each hotel reflected its location's soul. It was the work I loved building from the ground up, no spotlight needed. Danielle, true to her word, vanished from the hotel industry. I heard she opened a handmade furniture shop in Santa Barbara, living a simpler life, far from the ambitions that once led her astray. I'm no longer angry with her. Instead, I feel regret for what we once had and for what she lost to rivalry. Dad, now fully retired, became a storyteller for my niece and nephew, passing down lessons from my grandfather about family and hard work. During one dinner, he took my hand and said, "Brandon, you did what I couldn't. You preserved our legacy. Not just with land, but with heart." Those words, more than any victory, made me feel I'd chosen the right path. Harbor View is now a symbol of resilience, not just for me, but for the entire team. From Miguel still running maintenance with his unchanging smile to the front desk staff I train now managers. I established a charity fund called Skyreach Legacy, supporting education and housing for hotel workers' children across the Northeast. Every time I walk into Harbor View, seeing smiling guests and staff working with pride, I know I didn't just defeat Danielle, I overcame fear, doubt, and the temptation of vengeance. If you followed this far, thank you. This story isn't just about family drama or business schemes, it's about finding strength within yourself even when the world turns against you. The biggest lesson I learned: build a strong foundation not just with money or power, but with loyalty, integrity, and belief in what's right. Whether you're facing betrayal, failure, or injustice, remember those who are patient, who work quietly, will always find light at the end of the tunnel. I'm Brandon Kesler, and this is my story, but I hope it inspires you to write your own. Keep fighting and never give up.